LC Productions, bringing you a video tutorial on how to achieve that classic wall of sound. Our example track is a single that we've just recently released called Break My Hell, featuring Counterfeit Radio's frontman Patrick Manzanito. You can download it for free for a limited time at facebook.com/elci Productions, or you can get it on iTunes at any time. Today we're going to show you how we did the rhythm guitars and how we achieved the nice big fat wall of sound. Alright, let's take a look. Alright, if you notice starting out, here's our rhythm electric guitars. We've obviously got a few tracks. So start with the basics. Is you want to record, at least you want to double your tracks. In our case, we tripled them. Here's our takes. We did 1, 2, 3. And in our case, we doubled each of those. We ran our guitar through a direct box, ran a direct out into our DAW, and then we ran the other one into our amp. So for each take, we've got an amp take and we've got a direct take. Here's what the amp take sounded like. And here's what our direct take sounded like. The reason for the direct take is so that we can adjust it however we want to adjust it in the DAW, and the reason for the amp take is so that we get a nice realistic sound to blend it with. Alright, here's a couple tips. If you noticed on our amp take, we used a very clean distortion. Here we can listen to it again. All that is a distortion with a little bit of chorus from the amp on it and nothing else. And the reason is we want to start out as clean as possible because we're going to add extra amps, as you can see, build up our amps in Sonar. And if we start out muddy, it's just going to get muddier and muddier. We want to start out clean so that we can get muddy if we want. But we want to start out as clean as possible so that our tracks build up and stay clean. And tip number 2, when you're recording rhythm, a great way to record, especially if you're using distortion, is just to use 2 notes. So your bottom 2 strings, just do a root and a fifth for each chord, or a root and a fourth for each chord. If you don't know what that is, there's plenty of tutorials on what a root and a fifth of a chord is and a root and a fourth is. But if you just stick to 2 strings, you're going to get a much cleaner sound. It's still going to sound big and heavy and full because we're going to layer so much, but it's not going to sound muddy. Alright, if you notice, one other thing we did after we recorded our 3 takes, where each take is 2 tracks, so 6 tracks in all, then the last thing we did was a palm mute. And we just recorded the take doing palm muting. And here's what that sounded like. And the reason for that is just to add a little bit of clarity, a little bit of punchness, a little bit of punch, and a little bit of crispness to your, mostly to the attacks. It's going to add a little bit of fullness, but we've got it so subtle in the mix that the body's not really coming up. It's really mostly for attacks. Alright, then the second thing you're going to do, once you got all your takes and you got them lined up, now you want to slice them. You want to cut them up. And basically the idea is just cut them right before the transient, grab all your tracks and just slice them right before the transient. And actually, if you're using heavy distortion, you don't even have to go right before the transient. You can see we're kind of lazy, like technically right there is the true transient, and technically right here is the true transient where it starts. But we just did it by grid. We just grabbed them all and sliced them according to our snap 2 grid, which when you're using heavy distortion works just as well. And you just want to put a tiny bit of space there. In Sonar, you can just grab all the tracks, hold the shift key down, and move them all at once. So that's all we did, was slice everything, grab them all at once. Oh, and actually if you you can grab multiple tracks. So you can grab multiple slices and move them, hold the shift key down, and so you can move them all at once. So you can slice everything and then grab them all, and in one move, you've got all your space. So it goes really quick. The idea with the space is you don't want to be able to hear it, you just want to be able to feel it. So if you can tell there's space between the notes, that you've put too much space. You just want it to, you'll hear it. Once you put a little bit of space, it crisps up the attacks. It gives it a little more hard defined attack. And that's exactly what you want, just a harder defined attack. And you can hear how you can tell that it's going da-na-na. You can hear those crisp and clean, and that's because of those space. The next thing we want to do is EQ everything and begin to add our amps. And the general way to think about EQing it is you've got 3 tracks, each a set of 2. So 2 of those tracks, a direct and an amp, EQ and make them your highs. 2 of those tracks, EQ and make them more of your mid-range sounds, and 2 of those tracks, EQ and use amps that make them sound lower. And that way you've got your full spectrum, but each one isn't taking up the other one's space. Now, on ours, we didn't truly do highs, mids, and lows, but we do 2 highs, 2 mids, and 2 lows. They're just kind of randomly spaced out. So anyways, if you want to hear what each one sounds like, alright, so you can tell there's a pretty wide range in there, but all together they come together to make one nice, big, powerful sound. Let's see, the virtual amps we used were Guitar Rig 4, and then we used Cakewalk's amp simulator. But feel free to use whatever you want. Trash 2 has some great guitar amps, and there's Guitar Rig 5 and plenty of other stuff out there. And I won't go into great detail about mixing, but just mix it so that it sounds good to your ear. But if you notice, everything is very, very low because all these things build up to make such a big sound that you see I've got -18, -18s, plus the volume's down at -14, -12, -15. Everything's really low. We can always push up the final sound louder at the end. So when you're mixing it at first, drop everything low and just build it slowly to how you like it, the big fat round sound. Alright, the last and kind of finishing touch to this portion is to add one more thing, and that is add a MIDI synth. This is very subtle in the mix. It's almost not even heard, it's just more felt, but it gives it some consistency and a little bit of body, so when you turn the volume down, you still feel it and hear the guitars really well. And this is what it sounds like. Let me turn off the effects. So it sounds pretty crappy, pretty synthy. I did put a couple effects on it. So that sounds slightly more like a guitar, but then it's turned way down in the mix, so you can just barely hear it. It's just barely adding something. It adds more of a shadow to the sound than anything you can actually like pick out and really hear. One other thing that will help your mix fill it out a little more is also to add some subtle pitch shifting. You see I got a pitch shifter on here, and if you just use between 5 and 15 cents or -5 and -15 cents, and here we've got a wet dry mix of dry 80, wet 20, but if you do somewhere between 20% wet and 10% wet, that'll add some body and fullness to everything and make your sound a little bit bigger. So there's another option to making your sound a little bit bigger as well, is just add a little detuning. Very subtle, 5 to 15 cents either way, and then keep it, 10 to 20% in your mix, but that'll fatten up your mix a bit. Alright, now here is the big secret. This is something that I've never seen anybody else talk about, never heard anybody else talk about. But this is really what takes the wall of sound and turns it into the fat, rich tube of sound. The wall of sound is still kind of, it's big, but it's flat. This makes it round and interesting and moving, and it's what puts the finishing touch. And it took me a while to figure out what this was. Basically, all it is animating aspects of that mix. Something in that mix needs to be morphing, moving. You can use whatever you want. You can animate a chorus, you can animate a flanger, you can animate the EQ, you can animate the Pro filter, you can animate a wah. Guitar Rig has LFOs that you can add to any knob, and just adding subtle LFOs to knobs will start to build this up. But the big secret is you want to do it by hand because you want it to make sense with the music. So that's what these last 3 tracks are. If you see, I have 3 random tracks. And basically I just took a wah. You see in Guitar Rig, I just took your basic real wah, and I found kind of the sweet spot where it doesn't sound annoying, and I stay, limited in that spot. Let's see, we can watch it animate as it plays. And then just by hand, do it by hand, because that's what gives you the organic, natural feel, and it will make sense with the music. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is subtle in the mix. It's just to add depth and make it interesting. So here it is at the actual volume. So you hear how quiet that is? Just to add depth. The other thing is kind of pick your higher EQ'd sounds to add these to, because your ear is going to pick up on the higher sounds. The low stuff is just going to get lost in the mix. Alright, so there's the wah. Then I did a Pro filter. Same exact thing, just found the sweet spot on the cutoff and then hand animated it. So, in Sonar, I don't know if you know this, if you just click this little right button, then when you hit play, any knob that you adjust automatically tracks up here and creates an envelope for it, so you can hand animate stuff. So that's how you do it in Sonar. Every DAW is going to be different. Anyways, here's how it sounds. Alright, but here's how subtle it was in the mix. Like, you can barely hear that. So that is the secret to make your sound bigger than a wall, and to make it the next step, the true huge sound that today's guitars make. Alright, this is the next step. This is all for the left channel. So every single one of these, just highlight and pan hard left all the way. Then you're going to want to clone these tracks, and those will become your right. Take those right tracks and pan all of them hard right. Then there's 2 things you want to do to the right tracks to make your sound even bigger. And the first is just simply grab all of your panned right tracks and move them back. I use ticks. I just count, and I usually do it about 12. So if you zoom in close, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyways, I usually do it about 12 of those ticks back. So it's very, very subtle, but what it does is it makes your mix instantly sound bigger, because your left and your right channels are playing at slightly different times, which gives you instant width to your mix. Then the other thing to do is, just like we hand animated the wah and the Pro filter up here, delete out those 2 tracks that you cloned, grab yourself a different track. Like in this case, I just grabbed track 1. Also, I think is a higher EQ'd sound, so you can hear this a little better in the mix. Clone it, and then in this case I did the Pro filter again. Again, hand animate it. The secret is hand animate. It sounds more organic, more real. It goes with the flow of the sound. And then put that subtly into your mix, and you should have a big fat tube of sound. So here is just the guitars playing. This is what we got. Alright, so the final thing that puts the icing on the cake is you got to add bass into it. Because those guitars sound good, but they don't sound as full. You got to add bass. So the same thing with the bass. Do your live take and go in and slice it and put that tiny bit of space in between each transient so you get a little bit of clarity on each attack. Then do what you did before with the Pro Filter and hand animate. Let's see. Yep, I just did Pro Filter again and just hand animate. And again, you're just adding depth to your mix. Then one thing I like to do, which kind of gives you like a parallel compression. If you have Guitar Rig 4, just use vintage bass. It's a great bass sound, and because it's got so much compression on it, that it kind of becomes like a parallel compression track. You can slap that onto your track and then turn the volume way down, and it just is going to add some fullness. It's not going to overpower your live bass sound, but it's going to add some fullness. Then again, add a MIDI and a square saw to your mix. I like to use Omnisphere. And again, this is just a mix in to give it some body. Some depth. And then I just like to add in stuff sometimes, and so I added in Trillion. That's a Spectrasonics bass plugin that gets some cool sounds, and you can hear that's just in there for some texture. So all together we got the bass. You can see overall it still sounds just like a live bass sound, but all those other things add depth and richness to the mix. Alright, let's hear everything together. Alright, one last final thing that may or may not interest you is on the guitars. I really found that you get some cleaner sounding. This is back to the rhythm guitars, not the bass. But you really get a cleaner sounding mix if you drop it pretty hard up here around 4 and 8K. I've got it dropped to 8 decibels right there. And I did it on both the left and the right tracks, and that really just lets the other stuff sit and breathe in the mix. And that's it. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. Sorry, I'm always bad with goodbyes. Go make some fat walls of sound.